Guys, this is Chance, and this is the CSS Crash Course, making design and putting design to your HTML. So with the CSS Crash Course, let's talk about cascading style sheets. And so while we're adding design to our HTML markup, we're going to be doing this in a separate file than our HTML file. And we used to do it all together, and I'll show you that in a little bit, but today's way of doing it is dividing our HTML from our CSS entirely. And so we have a style sheet.css here, and this has the .css extension showing that everything inside this file is going to be CSS syntax. It's going to be CSS code, and this is an example of what that looks like. So let's break this down. We have the body declaration, actually the selector. This is going to be the element we're going to style. And so in HTML, we have that body tag that we can now style, and we can put in the font size 16 pixels and the background of white. And then what we're saying here is that we're going to declare the font size, the type of style we want to apply. And then after the colon, then we'll have a value of 16 pixels with a semicolon at the end. That kind of ends the line. And so we are declaring background with a colon and then white with a color. And then we can have a semicolon at the end of that. And so with the body selected, we've given these styles, and then that's how CSS is written. So let's break this down a little further. So where we might select a specific tag of HTML, we can also create elements, not elements of HTML, but we can create a selector of our own. And so we can be very specific with an ID, a hyphen here, and with this ID of logo, we're saying this logo is going to have a width of 200 pixels. When we do a class, we're going to refer to all of the elements with the class of services. And so you can't have duplicates of logo on a single page, but you can have duplicates of classes. And so we've given each of these styles, and so let's break this down and see what the HTML might look like. So with comments, because I want to show you the HTML inside of here, but I need to show you comments first to let you know that I'm not writing HTML inside of my CSS. So with the single line comment, we'll do a // and everything after is a comment. And then the /* is opened and then closed with */ just the opposite, and that's going to be a multi-line comment. So let's give an example of what body looks like. So I've wrote HTML inside of a comment, so we know what we're looking at on the HTML side. And we're referencing a body tag, which is where all of the content sits on a page. And we're giving it a font size of 16 pixels, and everything inside is going to have 16 pixels unless defined otherwise. And so if we have a logo, we're going to have a width of 200 pixels for this element. And so we have an image with a logo.png, and we've got it wrapped in a div of an ID of logo. There does not need to be another ID logo on this page anywhere. It's not even possible to style two ID elements. It's only going to style the first one. And so we're going to reference the logo by a hash of logo, and then you can move forward. So with classes, we have the .services, and that's going to have a font size of 18 pixels. And the way this looks like in HTML is class equals services inside of quotes. And then everything inside will have font size of 18 pixels. And then this element you can have multiple times. As long as any element has a class of services, it'll have a font size of 18 pixels. So really handy and is helpful. So the old way of doing this is adding all of those styles to the individual elements. And the problem with this is when you have multiple pages, you would have to go into each individual page and change the element style. If you had an H1 on every page with a font size of 30 pixels and you wanted to change that to 32, you'd either have to do a find and replace on your text editor, or you'd have to go into each individual file, and sometimes it's 50 files, and go in and change that H1 style. So the great thing about CSS is you've got an independent file of styles that you can edit, and then it'll be pointing and directing all of the layout and styles to all of your pages. So it makes it really easy to edit. So don't do inline styles. Not a good thing. Keep them separate. So the way we'd reference our file is with a link tag inside of our head, and that's with rel with a relationship of style sheet, and then the HTTP reference, the path to this file, looks like it's in the same directory of styles.css. And so that's inside of our HTML file. So best way to do this is just get started. So I'm going to back out of the presentation, open my editor here, and it looks like I'm already in my Crash Course folder. I'm going to back out just to show you what that looks like. So if we're in the home directory, I'm going to cd into my work in progress folder, which is where I keep all of my code. I just created a folder, and that's where all of my code goes. I've got a CSS folder called CSS Crash Course. Not a CSS folder, but it's a Crash Course folder, project folder. I'm going to hit enter. And now I'm inside of changed directories into there. I'm getting ls, and it'll show me I have an assets folder and an index.html folder or file. So I'm going to open Sublime Text. I've got this little shortcut I can type with a space and then hit period for the current directory, and I can open up Sublime Text with this project. So in the index.html, we have a little bit of HTML, and let's give this some styles. Looks like we've already referenced that style sheet. And you'll see that it's inside of assets and styles as a directory, where our example in the presentation did not in the slides. So I've got an assets folder and a styles folder, and inside I have a style CSS. This is the structure you'll see a lot, at least as of today, with assets having maybe images and fonts and JavaScript and a lot of other elements inside. We have a styles folder, and then inside of that we might have several style sheets. And so in this case we've got styles.css, only one file, but I wanted to show you that structure because you might see it quite a bit. So we've referenced the style sheet. Let's take a look at this page. I'm going to right click and open in the browser. So open in Chrome. Looks pretty plain Jane with a little bit of black text and white background, so let's give it some styles. So something very simple just to show you how this works and let you know how you would link it up in the file, and then let's move to CodePen where we've got a few challenges to give you. So we can reference the body tag that we have, and if I divide this out here, let's at least be able to see both. And with the HTML on the right, I've got this body tag I can give a style to, and so let's give that a width of, let's do 60%, and let's give it a font size of, well, complete it for me, 16 pixels, and then let's also give the H1 a color. Font color is going to be color, and let's do 333 is a hexadecimal color, and it's going to be like a gray. Some of these you'll remember. And also let's do a font size of something really neat you could do is if you define the base font, because body is going to wrap everything, base font is 16 pixels. I can say 3M, and that's going to represent 3 times 16 pixels. And it's really a nice way to say if I ever needed to kind of dial down or dial up the size of the entire document and everything just kind of bump up with it or bump down wherever direction you're going, you can just change that base, and then everything else is just going to be run on M's, and it's easy to modify. It's pretty neat. So I'm going to hit save, and let's see what this looks like. Great, so we can see that the text is no longer running all the way across the page. We've also given this a larger font size and a color. It's really simple. One more thing we could do just to go crazy is we could give this a background color of green, save it, and then now we've got this ugly color all the way across. We could even change at least this to a white, and now for some reason it looks somewhat better. Anyways, so that's how you're applying CSS to your pages, and it's gonna take a lot of practice to know what's available, because all of the elements that you can find, Google search is your friend, and at least I can show you a couple challenges to move on from here. So first challenge I have is this pasta cart restaurant. And with this, I have an image of what this is supposed to look like. And what you basically do is just come down here, hit fork, and create your own CodePen project if you want. And then you could hit fork, and you'd be able to just add styles to this and make it look the way it's supposed to. And then maybe I'll even do a video. Maybe in the link below, I'll link the video of me actually doing this if you're interested. And the one I'm going to leave entirely on your own is going to be this example of a tab and just a little bit of a layout, just a little more refined design. And that's going to look like this. You've got a nice large header, you've got tabs. If you want, you could place a hover state on these tabs. You don't have to worry about the JavaScript changing the text underneath when you click the tab of info and review and related, but also maybe some elements underneath for rounding the image or doing the circle image. I've already got all of the HTML ready for you. All you have to do is start typing in the CSS and giving it the styles to match that design. And that's a lot of what you'll do as a front-end designer or front-end developer, is going to be taking designs and turning it into something beautiful that the designer has declared this is what we need to do. And so you can use your expertise to execute that design. And that is how we will roll out. So if you guys have any questions, leave them in the comments below. And glad you joined me with a CSS Crash Course. Adios.